If you've been following this playlist, you've heard me talk about the 5-element matrix system and how it is the missing piece for your animal business. This is a kind of a lens that will let animal professionals see to the core of the animal that they're helping in their business. I've said that this system helps you avoid that kind of cookie cutter approach where every animal you serve exactly the same way. And it allows you to really customize all of your services to your clients. So you get better results, you get them faster, and it's a lot easier to do. So today's the day that I'm going to be kind of pulling back the curtain so you can see behind what this method is all about. Because I've been telling you about how fun it is, how effective it is. Now you're going to see how we might actually apply it. We're going to go over that 5-element matrix system, why it's so much more powerful than those cookie cutter or recipe-based acupressure approaches, and you'll see a whole new way of seeing animals. And remember, this is for all animal professionals. So you body workers will definitely see how we use the acupressure with this 5-element system, but it's also fantastic for all of you who never intend to do any body work at all, because insight and understanding is good for all animal professionals. So let's dive in behind all of this method so you can have access to it too. I'm Susan Tenney, the co-founder of Elemental Acupressure, and I've been teaching this 5-element matrix system for over 30 years. And here's what I've seen again and again and again. Once you see animals through the lens of this 5-element matrix system, you never see animals the same way again. You understand more, and that is really exciting. Now, I know that's a really big claim, but it's really true. So recently I was in a class with 2 of my students, and they told me about what they were getting out of the class, learning this 5-element system. And what was so interesting is that one of the students, who was a professional body worker, she said when she came to the class, she was excited to learn acupressure points and the pathways of the meridians, that kind of thing, so that she could slot in these techniques and ideas and theories into her existing body work. And she said she definitely got that in the class. But what she hadn't expected is how this 5-element system had transformed the way that she understood not only her own animals and her own self, but definitely the clients that she was working with back at home. And that was a really powerful moment for her, because she realized not only did she have new skills to apply, she had new insight. Now, the other student was also there, and she was also really excited about what we were learning in the class. And as a positive reinforcement trainer, along with her bodywork skills, she added that she all of a sudden really understood the motivation and the learning style and all sorts of new ways of approaching her training clients as well as her bodywork clients. And she's gone home in the weeks after the class to post some incredible videos about all of the ways that she's applied these ideas, new ways of applying bodywork for traumatized dogs and, horses that aren't super happy about touch. And all of a sudden they're just melting to her approach and her touch. It's a wonderful transformation. And so what I really want to impress upon you is that, yes, this 5-element system is not just about learning some points. It's way more than that. It really allows you to see the animals at the core and to understand a much deeper level. Now, those are just a couple of tastes of the kind of feedback that we tend to get from people that come and study with us. This 2-step system really is a catalyst for transformation in their work. They go from being skilled and experts in their fields, whether it's bodywork or training or whatever, to having this whole new way of working and succeeding within their business. Now, what I want to do is to take you through the different kinds of ways that we can use this 5-element system so you understand kind of how it differs from the more common way that you might learn about an acupressure point if you Googled it or you just saw it on a Facebook post. We're going to line out how this system takes you much, much deeper. And let me tell you, it is going to transform the way that you work. We use the acronym POINT, or P.O.I.N.T, to describe 5 different ways that you can use acupressure of varying levels of sophistication. Now, the first 3 approaches are simple and obvious, and they can be very effective too. They're what we call the starting points approaches because they're just kind of a general on-ramp if you've never done acupressure before, or you just want a simple solution for an everyday symptom or behavior or something like that. It's kind of like if you have a headache and you take an aspirin and you feel better because you've relieved the pain. This process doesn't take you deep into understanding why you got the headache or why that animal has the condition that you're addressing with those simple point approaches, but it does create a solution. It gives relief. No problem with that. But when we take those last 2 approaches, those are the N and the T in the P.O.I.N.T acronym, what we're going to see is those take you deeper. Those allow you to go to the next level with your clients. Again, whether you're using this through the body work that you do with an animal or some other animal profession, doesn't matter. Your point selection is being based on a much more nuanced and tuned in a way of dealing with the point selection. And that lets your results be that much better. So unlike the aspirin approach where you're just kind of popping a pill and you feel better, this is allowing you to have the equivalent of going to a specialist where you really talk to someone who really knows deeply all about your story, why that headache is arriving, what the triggers are, and how to work with much more complex ways of dealing with headaches so you don't get headaches in the future. You're really going to the core because you understand the root cause, and that allows you to devise a much more effective and customized solution that can ultimately be much more effective. And this is what we're talking about with our POINT protocol. We're going to go through nice and quickly those first 3 that are the starting point approaches, and then we'll target those last 2, which, wow, they will give you much better results. So the most simple way to work with generalized acupressure is to use a pinpointed method. That's the P in our POINT protocol. And this is when you choose a point, an acupressure point that is near your symptom. So let's imagine that you have a dog with hip dysplasia, pain, and you want to help them feel more comfortable and have some pain relief. So gallbladder 30 is a point that is right there near the dog's hip. And so when you work on that point, it's a very simple and direct approach, and it really stays surface level, but it can be very effective and work to relieve pain for that dog, which is great. But we can also move to the next one, and that is the O in the POINT protocol, and that is what we call the optimized approach. And this is where you use a point that is on the meridian pathway that goes through that symptom. So for this situation with a hip dysplasia, because the gallbladder meridian or energetic pathway goes around that hip joint of the dog, we can use really almost any gallbladder point to optimize our point selection and give them kind of more options for choosing points that might be really good. For example, we might want to go to gallbladder 20 or gallbladder 44, which are on either side of the issue. One's up by the ears and one's down by the paw, but they're still actually quite effective at helping with hip pain because they are on that channel. Now, the third option is the I in our POINT protocol, and that is the intelligent approach. Now, this intelligent approach is one that requires you to actually memorize your point functions, because when you understand that the acupressure points have been used for centuries, and you know that certain points have certain functions or certain effects on the body, then you can memorize what that point does. And it may be nowhere near the symptom itself. For example, pericardium 6, for example, is used for digestive upset, even though it's over by the elbow. It's not really by the belly where the dog might be having that pain. And the same thing goes for our hip dysplasia dog. We might use a point like bladder 40 or bladder 60, which aren't nearby the hip, so it's not kind of a local solution, and they're not on that gallbladder channel that we were talking about, but they're very effective, and we've known this for centuries, for dealing with hind leg pain, including hip dysplasia. So any of these approaches are a great place to start with your acupressure adventures, because you'll get good wins, you'll see results, the animals will like them, and that's very empowering and very useful. But you're not giving that kind of specialist or kind of expert level choice. You're having to either memorize the points or just kind of play around with the points that are in the area of the symptom. You haven't gone to really look at why these animals are having these conditions, or what's really going on beneath the symptoms. And this is where we have to go to the next level. Now, here is where the shift happens, and we go from doing generalized, kind of one size fits everybody solutions to customized solutions. And this is where I get really excited to tell you about how the 5 elements can be such an incredible solution for the animals in your care. Now, we've tried the P, pinpointed, or O, optimized, or I, intelligent selections for our points. But now it's time for the nuanced and the tuned in way of working with the points. With the 5-element matrix system, we are now moving into where we are getting customized insight, and you're going to use a 2-step process to identify an animal's unique constitutional pattern, their elemental constitution. And this is their network of how all of these 5-element energies or patterns work together to create a matrix, an energetic matrix that creates who they are as an individual, and it also dictates how you're going to be most successful in working with them. Now, it takes a little bit of extra effort, but it's totally worth it. Instead of just Googling a point somewhere, you're actually going to have to spend some time understanding these 5 patterns and how they network together, but it is so worth it. Also, from day one, you start getting insight and you start seeing results, and that will definitely motivate you. Now, in order to determine that 5-element matrix pattern, there's a couple of ways that you can kind of pursue that information and gather the data, as it were. So what you're going to do usually is talk with the client all about their animal and gather their full history through talking to them about their health and their behavior, their stress response, just about everything, so you can understand that animal at the core, not just what's going on today, but what that individual is telling you through their entire life story. You won't need to know everything, of course, but the more you know, the better your information is, the better your assessment will be. Now, sometimes you don't know that much about the animal. Maybe you've just brought them home from the rescue, and in that case, we have other skills we can use too. We can do palpation, we can watch how they respond to acupressure, we can use astute observation of the animal's movement and response to things. There's all sorts of ways that we can gather our information, but it leads us to be able to make a 5-element assessment about that animal's matrix pattern, their unique constitutional pattern that really describes who they are. Now, once you have that assessment and you have understood that it's a dynamic pattern that does shift over time, but still has certain kind of threads running through it of consistency, you will be able to start working toward the root cause of the issues that your client wants to work with. Maybe you have health issues or movement issues that you want to help that animal with, and you're going to have a much deeper understanding about why those health issues exist. Same goes for behavioral issues that may exist, like anxiety or aggression. You're going to understand their learning style better, so you'll know best how to work with them, how to handle them. Even their social interactions will be in this pattern. So there's so much more information that you will have and understand. Now, what this also lets you do is take action. So the first part is that insight, but then you have to actually take action, and you can, because you have better information, better understanding, better insight. You're able to make better point selections. You can use 5-element protocols. You can use all sorts of different point protocols, but it's all based on that understanding of that 5-element matrix. And that really gives you insight on how to create a protocol or how to create a session with your acupressure or your handling that is tailored to that animal's specific needs. That's why we call it nuanced. It understands the nuances of that animal's needs and what to do about it. The last step in our POINT acronym is T for tuned in. And here is where we start to act on all of that insight that we gathered through our nuanced approach in the previous step. We understand that animal's 5-element matrix pattern. Terrific. Now we have to take action. And we can, because we have that deeper level of understanding. And that allows us to choose points that are much more tailor-made for the individual. Not just, oh, the point is near the pain that the dog is having for hip dysplasia, but understanding that this animal, this individual, has a unique set of needs and a unique set of responses, and this is where we are making our protocol from. It's like the difference between taking an aspirin for a headache or going to a specialist who has a multi-pronged approach to helping you with maybe some specialized medication, maybe some meditation or Qigong approaches for stress relief. Maybe you change your diet to deal with dietary triggers. You're diving deep into a very nuanced and tuned in approach that really goes to the core. Now, to do this, you can use whatever skill that you come into our program with. For example, if you're a trainer or a hoof care specialist or a pet care professional, all of those are open to you. But we also love to share all of our hands-on and energetic techniques as well. Because when you are tuned in, you can absolutely be working with the body's chi or life force energy. We do this through acupressure point work. We do this through energy work, like our grounding and energy reading techniques. We do no pressure acupressure, which is a distance acupressure technique that is fantastic for super sensitive animals that aren't so sure if they're ready for touch. We even have brand new tools in our system that allows you to use these incredible Taishin and Enshin tools to do the point work in the most delicate and light and energetic way possible. So there's all sorts of ways that you can take the insight from your nuanced assessment and go and apply these techniques for your point work. And here, again, you might still be using that gallbladder 30 point that's near the hip dysplasia, but you might also be using a specialized point selection. Maybe you're using liver 3 because you know that that animal's constitution really calls for that point. Whereas another animal with a very similar symptom but a totally different profile might actually need kidney 3 instead, because you understand that animal at the core. This allows you to help that animal in their way instead of having the animal have to fit into your way. It takes a little bit of extra time, a little bit of extra expertise, but if you're an animal professional, that's okay. You are there to have these incredible solutions for your animal clients. Now that you've had a chance to hear how this point protocol lines out all these different ways that you can choose the acupressure points for the animals in your care, I hope it's given you a whole new way of thinking about that point work and how to take it to the next level. We are building an extensive resource right here in this playlist, and we're going to include all sorts of additional bits of theory and ideas and practical steps that you can take, and we'll also be going through some really exciting cases that will illustrate all of the things that we've been talking about here. So if this was your first glimpse of the actual 5-element system, you'll want to dive into our free resources, because this will let you try these systems out yourself. First of all, we have 2 quizzes for animals, one for horses and one for pets. And these are fantastic, whether you are an animal pro or an animal caregiver, and you can take this 5-minute quiz to go through and see what is the 5-element pattern of the animal that you're thinking of. It's really fun, and you'll get all sorts of resources sent to you after you get the result. But that isn't it, because if you're an animal professional, you'll want to apply these techniques in other ways as well. You will want to try our 5-element matrix quiz, because this is going to show you how to discover your 5-element business matrix yourself. You're going to be seeing how this 5-element matrix helps you to understand how you can do business your way and set up your animal business in a way that feels really aligned with you, feels natural, and just flows, so you can have more success, more fun, and more satisfaction in your business. Now, if this sounds like something you want to be more involved in, don't miss our free guided event that's coming up in October 2025. Our In Your Element experience is going to lay out step by step all of the ways that we go through this 5-element matrix system so that you can learn about it for your practice. I'll be sharing more details very soon, so join our mailing list so that you can sign up as soon as that's ready.